The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with whispers. Dozens of alien representatives sat in their high seats, their glowing eyes fixed on the lone human delegation standing at the center. Some looked curious, others amused. They all believed this would be the end of humanity's defiance. Ambassador Marcus Kane stood tall, his face calm, but his mind sharp as a blade. He had spent years in these chambers, listening to the so-called peace talks. Today, however, was different. Today was the final meeting. At the head of the chamber, Supreme Speaker Xelvar, a towering insectoid with shimmering golden armor, leaned forward. His voice was slow and calculated. Humanity must understand its position. Xelvar said, "You have fought well, but this war is over. The Galactic Council has decided your future." Kane did not respond. He had learned long ago that silence was more powerful than words. He simply waited. A reptilian warlord, General Tarkus, grinned, his sharp teeth glinting. "We are offering you peace, Kane, but peace comes with conditions." A holographic display appeared in the air, showing a map of human space. Kane's eyes narrowed as he saw the red marks covering Earth's colonies. "Earth will remain independent," Xelvar continued, "but under Council supervision. Your outer colonies will be taken. Your military will be dismantled. Your fleets will be scrapped. In return, we will allow humanity to exist." A silence followed. The words hung in the air like a heavy weight. The aliens watched, expecting Kane to argue, to beg for better terms. Instead, he smiled. It was not a smile of agreement. It was not a smile of gratitude. It was a smile that sent a strange chill through the room. Kane took a step forward, his voice steady. "Humanity does not surrender." The chamber erupted into noise. Some aliens gasped, others laughed. The younger diplomats whispered among themselves, confused. Xelvar's golden eyes gleamed. "Ambassador Kane, you do not have a choice." Kane met his gaze without fear. "Then neither do you." He turned and walked away. The human delegation followed him, their boots echoing through the silent hall. The doors closed behind them. For a moment, the council chamber was frozen in shock. Then, laughter broke the silence. General Tarkus leaned back in his seat, shaking his head. "Foolish creatures, they just signed their own destruction." A three-eyed diplomat from the Xeric species chuckled. "Humans think they can survive without us. They will come crawling back within weeks." Xelvar did not laugh. He watched the closed doors, his claws tapping against the table. Something felt wrong. The humans had never been reckless. They had never walked away from negotiations before. And Kane's expression, it was not the face of a desperate man. It was the face of someone who already knew the outcome. Somewhere, deep in the back of his mind, for the first time in his long life, Xelvar felt fear. Meanwhile, on Earth, in a hidden underground base, a massive screen flickered to life. Kane's recorded message played for the human military leaders. Stage 2 initiated. A low hum filled the command center as hidden warships powered up. Stealth drives activated. Cyber warfare systems came online. Humanity had been preparing for this moment. The Council thought they had the upper hand. They were wrong. The Galactic Council wasted no time after the humans walked out. Within hours, a declaration was sent across the stars. Humanity was now under full blockade. Trade routes to Earth were cut off, supply chains severed, and all Council-controlled planets were ordered to deny humans any resources. The Council expected a quick surrender. After all, no species had ever survived a full blockade. Without food, fuel, or trade, Earth's economy would collapse. The humans would come crawling back, begging for mercy. But something strange happened. Weeks passed, then a month, then 2. And yet there was no distress signal, no desperate messages from Earth. Humanity did not respond at all. Instead, a strange silence fell over human space. Ships sent to patrol the blockade simply vanished. Communications with outposts near human borders were lost without explanation. Some reported seeing brief flashes of movement in the darkness before they disappeared. Others didn't have time to report anything at all. At first, the Council dismissed these incidents as mechanical failures or pirate activity. But as the number of missing ships grew, so did the whispers. There were rumors that human colonies had not fallen into chaos as expected. Instead, they had gone dark, cutting off all outside signals. Even more unsettling, no refugees had fled. Every other race, when facing destruction, had sent escape ships, diplomats, or civilians seeking safety. But humanity had simply vanished from sight. Inside the Grand Chamber of the Council, the alien leaders gathered for an emergency session. General Tarkus slammed his clawed fist on the table, his patience wearing thin. "This is nonsense. We should have heard their surrender by now. Their food reserves should be running out. Their fleets should be desperate." His yellow eyes burned with frustration. "Why have we not crushed them yet?" An elder diplomat from the Velari species, a thin, ghostly creature with silver eyes, spoke softly. "Perhaps we have underestimated them." Zelvar, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. His golden exoskeleton gleamed under the chamber's light. "I warned you all," he said, his voice calm but heavy with meaning. "They walked away too easily. No species does that unless they have a plan." A nervous murmur spread through the chamber. The blockade was supposed to be a simple show of power. Humanity was expected to react with fear, not complete silence. Something was wrong, but no one knew what. Then, a council officer rushed into the chamber, his face pale and his breathing heavy. "We just lost contact with the Third Fleet near Proxima Centauri," he gasped. "All 50 ships, gone." For the first time in centuries, the council chamber fell into absolute silence. Panic spread through the Galactic Council like wildfire. 50 ships didn't just disappear without a trace. It was impossible. Even in the deadliest battles, there were distress signals, escape pods, or at least wreckage left behind. But here, there was nothing. Just silence. Zilvar sat motionless, his golden fingers tapping against the table. The other council members argued, voices rising in fear and frustration. Some demanded an immediate retaliation against Earth, while others hesitated. Something was wrong, but no one could agree on what. Meanwhile, out in the dark void of space, human warships moved like shadows. Their engines ran cold, their stealth systems active. The blockade that the Council had placed around Earth was now useless, because humanity had never planned to break through it. Instead, they had disappeared, slipping into the hidden corners of space, striking from the darkness. Council ships patrolling the blockade vanished one by one, their communications cut before they could even scream for help. It was a war unlike any the Council had ever fought before. Back in the Grand Chamber, Zilvar finally spoke, his voice cutting through the noise. "We need to stop underestimating them," he said, his golden eyes scanning the room. "We assumed they would beg for peace. They didn't. We assumed they would fight like everyone else. They haven't. The question now is, what exactly are they planning?" No one had an answer. The blockade was failing, but not because it was being broken. It was failing because humanity had stopped playing by the rules, and for the first time, the Council was beginning to understand their fatal mistake. "You said," deep in the void, far from prying eyes, humanity's counterattack had begun. The Galactic Council's fleets, once confident in their superiority, were crumbling without ever seeing their enemy. Human ships, equipped with advanced stealth technology, moved unseen, striking with precision and vanishing before a response could be mustered. Council officers, once smug in their belief that humanity was outmatched, now whispered of ghost ships and vanishing armadas. Fear spread through the ranks as entire patrols were erased without a single distress call. On the Council's most secure military outpost, General Tarkus stood over a holographic map, his sharp claws digging into the table. Red markers representing Council fleets flickered and disappeared. He had never seen anything like this. Battles usually left wreckage, survivors, some evidence of a fight. But here, there was nothing. It was as if the humans had become shadows, striking from the dark, and leaving no trace. "This is impossible," Tarkus growled, his tail twitching in frustration. "Where are they? How are they doing this?" A nervous officer hesitated before responding. "We don't know, sir. Our sensors detect no approaching ships before the attacks. It's like they're already there, waiting." The word sent a chill through the room. Meanwhile, on Earth, in a hidden command center buried beneath the surface, Marcus Kane watched the latest reports. His plan was working perfectly. The Council had always believed humanity was reckless, emotional. They had expected anger, desperation, a direct fight. But humanity had learned from history. Wars weren't won through brute force alone. They were won through strategy. And now, the galaxy was witnessing a war unlike any before. Across human space, hidden fleets moved in silence, striking key Council supply lines, disabling communication hubs, and leaving planets isolated. No grand invasions, no unnecessary destruction, just precise, calculated strikes that tore apart the Council's war machine piece by piece. The blockade that was meant to crush Earth had instead turned into a trap for the Council itself. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, Selvar watched as reports came in, his golden fingers tightening into a fist. He had seen many wars, but this was different. The humans had disappeared from sight, yet their presence was felt everywhere. They weren't fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to win. And for the first time, the Galactic Council was no longer the hunter. They were the prey. The war had changed. What was once a simple blockade meant to starve humanity into submission had become a nightmare for the Galactic Council. Their supply lines were collapsing, their fleets vanishing, and their strongest military outposts falling silent. Every attempt to strike back ended in failure. The humans never engaged in direct battle. They attacked from the shadows, disabled key infrastructure, and disappeared before anyone could react. It was not war. It was a slow, methodical execution. General Tarkus sat in his war chamber, staring at the reports with disbelief. 100 ships lost in a single night. A command station disabled without a single alarm being triggered. Entire battalions of ground forces stranded on distant worlds, unable to receive supplies. This was not how wars were fought. Wars were supposed to have battle lines, grand fleets clashing in space, but humanity refused to fight by the Council's rules. They were rewriting the rules entirely. The Galactic Council finally realized their mistake. They had treated humanity like a lesser race, believing them to be weak, emotional, and incapable of long-term strategy. But now they saw the truth. Humans were patient. They had waited for years, playing along with the Council's peace talks, preparing in silence. And when the time came, they did not panic. They did not fight blindly. They struck with precision, with intelligence, and with terrifying efficiency. In a desperate move, the Council gathered their remaining fleets into one massive armée. If they could not catch the humans in open battle, they would burn every human colony to the ground and force Earth into submission. It was a brutal, ruthless strategy, but it was the only option left. But as the Armada prepared to move, an alert flashed across every Council command station. A single message, broadcast across all frequencies. It was short, but it carried the weight of inevitability. Checkmate. At that moment, hundreds of hidden human warships uncloaked within Council territory. Major shipyards, command centers, and supply depots, all surrounded in an instant. The Galactic Council's final strategy had just become their final mistake. The Galactic Council's leaders watched in horror as their screens filled with red alerts. Human warships had appeared inside their most secure territories, bypassing defenses as if they were never there. Space stations, supply depots, and entire fleets were caught completely off guard. Panic spread like wildfire. Officers shouted conflicting orders, but it was already too late. Humanity had waited for this exact moment. The Council's desperate last stand had played right into their hands. General Tarkus gritted his teeth as he stood aboard his flagship. He could see the human fleet forming around them, cutting off every escape route. His claws dug into the control panel as he roared. How did they get past our defenses? How did we not see them coming? But there was no answer. The humans had been planning this war long before the Council ever declared the blockade. They had studied the weaknesses of every species, every fleet formation, every security system. And now, they were executing their final move. Zelvar, watching from the Council's capital, felt an unfamiliar sensation creeping into his mind. Fear. He had thought himself above such emotions, but now, as he watched his once mighty fleets being torn apart with surgical precision, he understood the truth. The humans had never been desperate. They had been patient. The blockade was never meant to trap Earth. It was meant to give humanity a reason to strike without mercy. Across the galaxy, human ships moved with terrifying efficiency. They did not waste time in prolonged battles. They disabled critical systems, cut off communication networks, and ensured that every Council fleet was blind and isolated. Within hours, the once powerful Galactic Council was crumbling. The few remaining Council leaders, now realizing the full extent of their mistake, sent a final desperate message to Earth. They begged for negotiations, offering peace on humanity's terms. They had thought themselves rulers of the galaxy, but now they saw the truth. They were not the hunters. They were the hunted, and there was nothing left they could do. The Galactic Council chambers, once a place of arrogance and power, were now filled with silence and fear. The surviving Council members sat motionless, their once proud forms now slumped in defeat. The war was over, not because humanity had asked for peace, but because they had taken victory. Every fleet, every military base, every strategic position of the Council had been shattered. The once mighty rulers of the galaxy were now at the mercy of the very species they had tried to subjugate. A deep hum filled the chamber as the massive doors at the far end slid open. A group of humans stepped inside, moving with quiet confidence. At their center was Ambassador Marcus Kane. His face was calm, but his eyes held no kindness. He had been here before, standing in this very room, listening to their demands. But now, the roles had reversed. Zelvar, his golden exoskeleton dim from stress, took a slow breath before speaking. Ambassador Kane, we request peace. His voice lacked its usual authority. There was no room for threats anymore. Kane studied him for a moment, then slowly stepped forward. Peace. He let the word hang in the air. You mean the kind of peace where humanity surrenders, where our colonies are taken, where our fleets are dismantled. Zelvar lowered his gaze. We made a mistake. Kane exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. No, you made many mistakes, but the biggest one was thinking we would kneel. He turned to the other council members. You believed we would come begging for mercy, that we would crumble under pressure, that we would break. His voice was steady, unshaken. But humanity does not break. We endure, and when the time is right. He glanced at the broken leaders before him. We strike. The chamber was silent. No one dared to speak. No one dared to argue. The Galactic Council, once the most powerful force in the universe, now waited for humanity's decision. Kane took a step forward, placing his hands on the table. This is how it will be. Humanity will no longer answer to this council. The council will answer to us. Your fleets are broken. Your defenses are shattered. And now, you listen. For the first time in galactic history, the balance of power had shifted. The era of human submission was over. The age of human dominance had begun.